Today, I want to take you on a journey into the life of a man who became more than just a soldier. He became a legend, a symbol, and to this day, he remains one of the most decorated American combat heroes in history. I'm talking about a man who seemed almost ordinary at first glance, small in stature, quiet in demeanor. Yet when the battlefield demanded it, he rose to heights that few could ever imagine. This is the story of Audie Murphy, a young man from rural Texas who would go on to earn every single major combat award for valor that the United States had to offer. From the Medal of Honor, to the Distinguished Service Cross, to the Silver Star, Bronze Star, and multiple Purple Hearts, Murphy's decorations alone tell a story of near superhuman courage. But medals are only part of the tale. What makes his story truly extraordinary is not only what he accomplished during the Second World War, but also how he carried the weight of those memories for the rest of his life. Over the next few minutes, we're going to uncover the battles, the sacrifices, the triumphs, and the scars, both visible and hidden, that defined Audie Murphy's journey. So if you want to hear about the man who turned from a farm boy into America's ultimate war hero, stay with me until the end. And before we begin, make sure you subscribe to this channel so you won't miss the other stories of forgotten heroes, untold secrets, and military legends that shape the world we live in today. Now, let's step back in time to 1942, when a skinny teenager decided to enlist and change the course of history. When the United States entered World War II, millions of young men rushed to enlist, but one of them stood out, not because of his size, but because of his determination. His name was Audie Leon Murphy, born in 1925 in Kingston, Texas. He grew up during the Great Depression, one of 12 children in a poor sharecropping family. By the time he was a teenager, he had already experienced hunger, hardship, and loss. His father abandoned the family, and his mother died when Audie was just a boy. For many young men in rural America, the military was a way out, a chance to find purpose and stability. For Murphy, it was even more. It was survival. He tried to enlist in the Marines, then the paratroopers, even the Navy, but every branch turned him down because of his small size. He weighed barely 110 pounds and stood just 5 foot 5 inches tall. He looked more like a schoolboy than a soldier. But Audie refused to give up. Eventually, in 1942, the U.S. Army accepted him. They didn't see much in him at first, just another skinny recruit. But within months, the Army would discover that inside this boy's body was the heart of a warrior unlike any other. Murphy was assigned to the 15th Infantry Regiment of the 3rd Infantry Division. He trained hard, pushed himself to the limit, and soon earned the respect of men who had initially mocked his size. He wasn't loud. He wasn't boastful. He simply did his job better than anyone else. By 1943, Murphy's regiment was shipped to North Africa and soon joined the invasion of Sicily. It was here, under the brutal Mediterranean sun, that Audie first tasted combat. The invasion was fierce, but Murphy quickly showed qualities that set him apart. While other men hesitated under fire, he stayed calm, calculating, and deadly accurate with his rifle. His natural instincts made him a born leader, even though he was still just a private. From Sicily, the campaign moved into Italy, where Murphy's reputation began to spread. He fought at Salerno, at Anzio, and in countless smaller skirmishes. During one engagement, he single-handedly took out an entire German machine gun crew, saving his platoon. For this, he received the Bronze Star. It was just the beginning. By 1944, Murphy had risen to the rank of sergeant. He was no longer the scrawny kid people underestimated. He was now one of the most effective soldiers in the entire division. His courage in battle was matched only by his endurance. Despite being wounded multiple times, he refused to be evacuated. Each time, he patched himself up, rejoined his men, and kept fighting. During the invasion of southern France, Operation Dragoon Murphy's legend truly began. On August 15, 1944, near Ramatuelle, his unit came under fire from German machine guns hidden on a hillside. Without hesitation, Murphy grabbed his carbine and crawled toward the enemy. Alone, he charged up the hill, killed the gun crew, and captured their weapon. Then, turning the machine gun on the Germans, he held off the counterattack almost single-handedly. For his actions that day, he received the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest military award for valor in the United States. But Murphy wasn't done. Just days later, during another firefight, he charged a German position, killed several soldiers, and forced the rest to surrender. For this, he earned the Silver Star. And only a week after that, he repeated the feat, earning a second Silver Star. By now, Audie Murphy was not just a soldier, he was a symbol. His fellow troops began to see him as invincible, almost superhuman. But Murphy himself never bragged. If anything, he was haunted by the faces of the men he had lost. The battle that made him immortal. It was January 26, 1945, near Holtzwihr, France. The snow was thick, the air freezing, and Murphy's unit was tasked with holding a defensive position against an overwhelming German force. The enemy attacked with tanks, artillery, and waves of infantry. Within minutes, the American position was nearly destroyed. Most of Murphy's men were dead, wounded, or forced to fall back. But Murphy stayed. He ordered his men to retreat to safety while he remained behind to cover them. Then, spotting an abandoned M10 tank destroyer, he climbed onto it, even though it was already on fire. Exposed to enemy fire, Murphy manned the .50 caliber machine gun mounted on top and unleashed a storm of bullets. For nearly an hour, he held off wave after wave of German soldiers. Despite artillery shells exploding around him and bullets whizzing past, he refused to leave. At one point, enemy troops came so close that he called in artillery strikes on his own position, preferring to risk his life than allow the enemy to break through. By the time the Germans finally retreated, Murphy had killed or wounded more than 50 enemy soldiers alone. His uniform was riddled with bullet holes, his hands were blistered from the overheated weapon, and yet somehow he survived. For this action, Audie Murphy received the Medal of Honor, the highest award for valor in the United States. The citation described his gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty. But words alone could not capture the sheer audacity of what he had done. By the end of World War II, Audie Murphy had become the most decorated U.S. combat soldier of the entire conflict. His awards included the Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, the Bronze Star, the Legion of Merit, and multiple Purple Hearts. In total, he received 33 awards and decorations from the United States, as well as honors from France and Belgium. But medals don't heal scars. Murphy had been wounded 3 times in combat, but the deeper wounds were invisible. Like so many veterans, he returned home carrying the heavy burden of what we now call post-traumatic stress disorder. He had nightmares, flashbacks, and struggled to adjust to civilian life. Yet Murphy refused to let the war define only his pain. He wrote a memoir, To Hell and Back, which became a bestseller and was later adapted into a film starring Murphy himself. In Hollywood, he built a career as an actor, appearing in more than 40 movies. But even as he smiled on screen, the demons of war never truly left him. He suffered from insomnia, kept a pistol under his pillow, and battled depression for the rest of his life. Despite his struggles, Murphy used his fame to advocate for veterans, speaking openly about the psychological impact of war, a subject that was often ignored in the 1940s and 1950s. In many ways, he was decades ahead of his time. Audie Murphy died tragically in a plane crash in 1971 at the age of just 45. He was buried with full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery, where his grave remains one of the most visited in the entire cemetery. What makes Murphy's story so powerful is not just his unmatched list of decorations, but the paradox of who he was. He never sought glory, never saw himself as a hero. To him, the medals were not symbols of pride, but reminders of the men who didn't make it home. He once said, "The real heroes are the ones who never came back." And yet, Whether he wanted it or not, Murphy became an icon. His story continues to inspire soldiers, historians, and ordinary people who see in him the very essence of courage, the ability to face unimaginable fear and still act. So, what do we make of Audie Murphy's story? Was he simply a soldier blessed with extraordinary courage? Or was he something more, a man shaped by hardship who found himself at the center of history's greatest conflict and refused to back down? What we know for certain is this: in all of American history, no other soldier has been awarded as many combat decorations as Audie Murphy. He remains the benchmark against which acts of military valor are measured. But even with all the medals, even with the fame that followed, Murphy himself never celebrated his own achievements. He carried them quietly, often reluctantly, as if every ribbon and star weighed on his conscience. In many ways, that is what makes his story so human. He wasn't a fearless giant. He wasn't a myth. He was a young man who felt fear, who felt pain, who lost friends, but who chose again and again to act in spite of those feelings. And that choice, repeated on battlefield after battlefield, is what turned him into a legend. Today, Audie Murphy's grave at Arlington remains one of the most visited. Veterans and families leave flowers, coins, and notes of gratitude, not because he was perfect, but because he embodied something timeless. The idea that ordinary people, even the smallest among us, can rise to do extraordinary things. And that is why his name, his story, and his sacrifice will never be forgotten.